So, Joe, we continue on our deep dives here. We go to the state of Indiana, to one of the, got to admit, one of the more national brands in the country. Tonight, your favorite school here, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. When we look at them as a whole going into the season, Joe, what are your thoughts on Marcus Freeman going into year 3?
Look, I look at what happened between last year and this year. And I know that last year, and as I said, I was very cautious about what they were going to be capable of doing because they were still progressing. They were still growing as a team under a head coach that was in his second year. It would be unrealistic and obnoxious. And I've criticized the expectations of Notre Dame fans before on this show. Sometimes Notre Dame fans, we can get a little bit ahead of ourselves. And there's some folks that maybe thought that they could be really good last year. They could have been a playoff caliber team. They just weren't there yet. I think that this season, this Notre Dame squad, because of all that they're bringing back, particularly on the defensive side of the football, that they are good enough to go on a multi-game run in the college football playoff. Because the question here right now isn't today if they're a playoff team. Their schedule is extremely favorable. It's very light. We've talked about it before. Everybody and their mother has talked about how light the Notre Dame schedule is this season. The only real challenges that they have are at the start of the year, going to Texas A&M, they host Florida State, and they go to USC. At the bare minimum, they are on a trajectory to go 11-1. This is the easiest schedule that I have seen them play in the last 10 years that I can think of. So, Blake, there is no reason why this team should not be in the playoff. But my bigger case here is why I think that they can win a game or two in this year's playoff is because of all the defensive pieces that they bring back. A defense that last year in total defense was 5th in the nation. They bring back most of their starting defensive line, most of their linebackers, and a young crop of other backups are stepping into starting roles. I'm really excited to see what Drake Bowen does, who's a fantastic player. But more importantly, they have one of the best collective secondaries in the country, right there behind Georgia. Xavier Watts won the best defensive back in the country award last year, and Benjamin Morrison's going to be a first-round pick. That defense is good enough to carry them. As long as their offense can take a step forward from last year under a brilliantly minded offensive coordinator that was LSU's last year. The most important thing to me, my last point here, Blake, it all just comes down to the health of Riley Leonard. Because Riley Leonard last year was dealing with a serious ankle injury. It was recurring. It was against Notre Dame when he played against Notre Dame. If he is not on the field consistently, the whole expectations for the season goes out the window. They need him on the field. That is a 50-50 flip of what happens with him and his health. But I still stand by this, man. I think that this Notre Dame team is one of the best that I've seen in the past 5 years.
So to your part about the schedule, it is weak. It's not a schedule that you would look at and say, hey, man, this is something that we should fear. It is softer than you would normally expect. No Clemson on there either.
Nope.
So, Joe, they only have 2 true away games, too. The other 2, Navy is going to be at MetLife, and Georgia Tech's going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So
I think they play Army at Yankee Stadium, too, which is also not really an away game.
No, and I mean, it's not an away game at all. I agree with you in the premise because their schedule is so light. They are good enough to make a playoff, and they're going to be in my playoff because, Joe, quite honestly, like A&M, I know it's in week 1, but down the stretch, you could be, week 9, week 10 and saying, man, how did we lose, hypothetically, week 1 to a Texas A&M team, year 1, game 1 under Mike Elko. Joe, I do think Louisville is still going to be better than people are portraying them to be. Look, you went into that game last year and people thought that, well, Notre Dame.
The home game this year, though.
It is, but a lot of people thought that, Notre Dame would go into that game, us included, and out-physical them, and it was the opposite that actually happened. That running game went off. That offensive line at Notre Dame kind of got pushed around there in the second half. So I do think that there are 3 big games on this schedule. Even 4 if you want to count USC. But for me, it's Florida State, Louisville, and Texas A&M. Being at Kyle Field at night, Joe, weird shit happens. Bottom line, okay? that game could be, Joe, 17-14 going into the fourth quarter. Would not surprise me either way. That place is weird. Think Notre Dame's going to probably win that game, but that's neither here nor there at the current moment. I agree with you on Riley Leonard. I do think that there have been question marks surrounding him nationally. And look, not just Mike Denbrock was the only LSU guy that went there. I think that, there has been some talk between staffs, if you will, about, hey, how's this going for you? Hey, how's that going for you? And I do think that there is a question mark on, can Riley Leonard stay healthy? I mean, you do have to take that chance there, though, with him because he can be so electric. I do, though, Joe. I know that you're going to be mad. I need to see the playmakers at running back and receiver. Not saying that they're not there. Not saying that they're not there. Because you did go out into the portal and got Chris Mitchell from FIU, 64 catches, over 1,000 yards last year. Okay, that's fine. However, I need to see it. Now, Mike, I will give Mike Denbrock this. Joe, I think more than anybody, you understand that relationship of him being here the last 2 years and me covering LSU every single day. I love Denbrock. And Denbrock's going to find open dudes. He's going to scheme dudes open. Not going to question that. However, when you go up against Florida State and that defense, I do ask just the simple question, do you have the playmakers that they do? Because I don't know on the outside if you do. I don't know about that, Joe. Fentrell Cypress did pretty good last year against Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors. You don't have a dude like that at all. So defensively, Florida State is going to be an issue. That could be the only game that you lose. Might be at A&M. I don't know. They are going to probably more than likely be a playoff team. But to say offensively that there aren't question marks, I also think is wrong. Not saying that they won't be talented, but you're bringing in a brand new quarterback. You're having to go get a number one wide receiver. Your All-American left tackle leaves. Your great running back leaves. Joe, because I feel like because it comes from this show, we won't act like that, okay, well, can Chris Mitchell pan out on the outside? What is the running game going to look under Mike Denbrock with Audric Estime not there? Oh, by the way, you're replacing a quarterback who, Joe, by the way, his real true first snaps in a Mike Denbrock offense is going to be in 3 weeks. How much catch-up does he have to have in the beginning of the season? Those are just questions I have. I'm not demeaning. I'm not trying to come in here and demean.
Okay.
I just don't think that you can look and say, hey, you've got that much to replace, and it's not a question mark.
All right. I'm not going to sit here and blindly say, yes, everything's perfect. This team is one of the best in the country. They've got no holes. I'd be, again, as I said in the lead-in of this segment, I would be a total jackass if I tried to come up here and blindly think that this team was some prolific, elite, unstoppable force. There are things that need to be fixed between this offseason and the start of this season. But I think that they've at least positioned themselves better than some of these other teams that we've talked about, their roster deficiencies that we were uncertain of, to resolve those issues quickly. Chris Mitchell is the type of receiver that they've been missing. Beat you over the top, deep threat, very, very fast. He's going to test really well at the combine. He is that deep threat that they did not have all of last year that you constantly criticize Notre Dame for not having.
And did they have it?
No, they didn't.
Okay. So don't act like I was unjustified.
That's not what I'm saying. Wait, what? That has nothing to do with the point I'm trying. The point I'm trying to make is that now they have one of those options, and they also have.
Are you 1,000% sold that Chris Mitchell in year 5 can come in here and duplicate what he did?
We're not talking about a G5 guy that had no production. That's all traits. He was extremely productive, and he's stepping into an offense that you just mentioned, led by and coached by an offensive coordinator that is great at finding playmakers that can stretch defenses. This is the body type of a guy that he would work with and get really good production out of. Is it not?
I mean, Joe, he had 2 first-round wide receivers and a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback that fell in his lap, to be fair. And I do think that Mike would tell you.
Wait. We can't act like we can't.
He did not recruit them.
Yes, but we can't act like a good amount of credit deserves to go to Mike Denbrock for all of those guys developed.
1,000%.
All right.
What I'm saying is You can't use transitive properties of what Mike did last year with that offense.
It's not a transitive. It's not a transitive property. Traits apply to scheme. He runs a spread scheme. He needs certain types of receivers.
Joe, now you are defending because
I'm not defending. You're just you're nitpicking. You're nitpicking. You do this every time we talk about them.
Okay. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say about him? Hey, they have a receiver that's coming in that was a 1,000-yard guy last year. Sounds good. No other guy on that team had over 500 yards receiving a year ago. Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
At some point, you have to go out there and prove it. So if I say that there are question marks, by the way, you did the same thing for Kentucky, who's bringing in a G5 guy that had 1,000 yards. You got to do it here for Notre Dame. By the way.
So you're asking the question. I'm agreeing you that there is a question. And what I led in the statement was saying, hey, they're trying to answer it and they're being aggressive in trying to answer it. And your comeback to that was just, oh, they still have to prove it. No shit, they have to prove it. Nothing's been proven yet. They haven't played a game.
That's my point. That is my point. Joe, I could see a scenario where you play Florida State as an example. They do have more playmakers than you do. They have more dudes on defense than you do.
On defense, yes. Offensively, I don't think that Florida State is not good enough to separate from Notre Dame offensively if Notre Dame sputters.
Very fair.
You can't move the ball.
Yep, very fair, especially with DJU. But down the stretch, I could see that. That's all I'm saying. You can't come in here and, Joe, again, take the golden helmet off for just a moment. Let's act like we're not talking about Notre Dame. If I came to you and said, hey, Joe, you have an offensive lineman at left tackle that's going to be a freshman and 2 sophomores getting full playing time and first-time starters this year. That's number one. You're replacing a quarterback. You're replacing some wide receivers. You're replacing a really good running back. You would also, what you're about to do in just a minute when you talk about LSU is saying, hey, how does LSU offensively replace those guys? And what I am saying here is I think that's the same label that you have to put on Notre Dame. Do teams have question marks? Yes. Do they have talent? Yes. But you can't look at just Notre Dame and say, hey, they're bringing in damn near, Joe, a brand new unit at big key position points. So,
but if you're gonna present this blind test team to me, I'd at least ask you the question of who are the guys that are stepping in to replace those roles and to fill those roles. That's important. That's why we do the deep dive, because we look at those guys and we try to figure out how they're going to be.
That's why I said you're bringing in talent. But God forbid I come out here and say, hey, Joe, you have a big-time left tackle that you have to replace that's going to be a true freshman, and then you have 2 sophomores in the interior that are finally going to get some playing time here. You would think that I'm saying something absolutely crazy about, hey, Joe, Riley Leonard, you came out in the open and says, can he stay healthy? He's got a true freshman left tackle and 2 dudes in the interior that are playing for the first time, and you want me to say, hey, Joe, are you 1,000% sure that they stand up?
So just like when we get to the LSU segment and I bring up what does the new group of receivers look like, because it's all pretty much new faces for the most part because the 2 biggest guys are gone, you're going to counter by bringing up, well, so-and-so looked really good in spring practices. Charles Jagasaw was one of the highest recruited.
You act like Tyron Lacey didn't go off on Caleb.
But wait. But this is my whole point is that I have the context to answer the question. You have the context to answer the question for LSU. I can confidently say that I'm not worried about Charles Jagasaw because Charles Jagasaw was a 5-star recruit, looked fantastic in the bowl game, and has been fantastic during the spring. That's not a position in a kid that I'm worried about. There's been times where they've replaced that left tackle spot with guys that stunk, and there was fear that they weren't going to be good. Look, to move this conversation forward, I think why I'm also even more optimistic is that Riley Leonard at Duke did not have anybody to connect with offensively. He did not. He didn't have any playmakers. We saw what he did against Notre Dame before he got banged up. We saw what he did against Florida State before his injury got re-aggravated. More importantly, Mike Denbrock turned Desmond freaking Ridder into a starting NFL quarterback. The NFL thought that he was startable at quarterback.
That's their fault.
He made him look so good.
Both of them got drafted, or one of them.
I'm just saying Denbrock gets the best out of a lot of quarterbacks. And if Riley Leonard's healthy, man, somebody who last year, Mel Kiper had him projected as a first-round pick. A lot of draft analysts last year had him projected as a first-round pick. A lot of people this year really, really like him as a potential early second rounder, late first round pick.
Did I say that Riley Leonard was going to suck at any point in this show?
That's
no.
Just because I'm making a point doesn't mean I'm attacking you. I'm not attacking you. I'm just trying to make a point.
No, you're attacking.
I'm not.
You're like Rhaenyra on House of the Dragon. You're about to say Dracarys and fire's coming from your mouth.
Nothing was directed at you. All I was trying to point out is that, like, hey, this offense is going to be completely different. It's way more dynamic than the Sam Hartman, Audric Estime, let's run into a wall and then fail to convert on third down every single time. There are so many more athletes. Jeremiah Love is an explosive space killer. Chris Mitchell, who we just mentioned a second ago,
all 385 yards of his explosive.
He was a freshman. He was a freshman last year.
Okay. So again, you're saying I know that he's going to be explosive. Again, you're trying to act.
You saw how slow Audric Estime was at the combine. That's all I'm saying.
Well, he ran people over. It wasn't his game.
And that version of football doesn't really work anymore. Clearly.
Fair. Defensively, Joe, I think one of the best interior defensive tackles in the country, Howard Cross. Dude was second in the team in tackles at 66 as a nose tackle. Did have 7 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. I think defensively they're going to be really good, like they always are under Freeman. I mean, look, man, at this point the proof is in the pudding with what Marcus can do defensively. I just think they're going to be a top 10, top 15 unit. I think that they are that good. My question becomes, I asked you this earlier in pre-production, do they have a premier pass rusher would be my only question. Do they have a guy on third down that can go get the passer?
I just don't think that this is in the NFL. You don't need a Myles Garrett to produce high sack production. I think that they were underwhelming last year, but I think that the addition of RJ Oben and all of these guys coming back, Jordan Botelho, who got hurt for part of last year, is returning as well. I'm more enticed by the cohesiveness that everybody's coming back and returning. You mentioned Howard Cross. I think he's going to take a really big step forward. Riley Mills, big body guy. He takes up space, not necessarily a production type player. They're well coached enough. And Al Golden is one of the most underrated defensive coordinators in the country, in my eyes. They're going to find ways to produce that. And especially for the fact that they can get a lot of coverage sacks. Their secondary is that good.
So, look, Notre Dame had a top 10 defense last year. They were 7th in the country in scoring defense. I just don't see a lot changing there, okay? And so I don't necessarily disagree that you just need one premier pass rusher. I just, I looked at watched a lot of Jalen Sneed today. I think he could be somebody at that rover position that can do it. He had 4 sacks a year ago. I don't know if I necessarily see holes. I do wonder, Joe, if there's a game that maybe they're off. The only thing that I would worry about with Notre Dame that I have a question mark on, you talked about earlier, could they win a playoff game or two? Look, sometimes defenses are just off their game. I don't know how to explain it. We saw Saban have multiple playoff times where his defenses got absolutely abused. Can they keep up with teams offensively? Maybe would be the only question. If the defense has a bad day, I don't know. But this defense is going to be really good, man. That would be the only things that I could pick holes in. I think they're a playoff team. I think at worst, maybe they're 10-2. That should be the floor. I don't know if they go undefeated. I will just say, though, Joe, they can answer a lot of questions week one. A lot of questions in week one against Texas A&M.
That's one thing that really stood out to me, and that's kind of the one thing I'm hanging my hat on here, is that how do they play against Texas A&M? Mike Elko's first game facing off against a team that he knows, a quarterback that he knows really well. What happens in that game? I think if Notre Dame, there's 2 ways for them to really prove, and I think incite a lot of confidence in supporters of Notre Dame, not just Notre Dame fans, but those that are pushing for them to be a top team this year. If they win by 5+ points, I think that at least makes you feel good about them. If they win by more than a score, that's enough fuel for the fire to say, hey, they stepped into a hostile environment. They looked much more potent offensively, and their defense is as good as expected. If they can do that, that to me is going to put them on a much higher trajectory and could be a huge momentum builder. I'm glad they're not playing Navy week 1 because I think that they need a game like this to get themselves rolling.
I will say, people forget about Connor Wegman, okay, what he did at the end of 2022 and then what he was doing in the beginning of 2023. You know, Joe Billy Lucci made a really good point that last week at SEC Media Days. The headlines were reading before Connor Wegman went down, hey, is he one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the SEC? Like, that was the national headline of Texas A&M. I don't want to say, though, Joe, I think Moose Muhammad is someone that could be special for them. A lot of those guys Jimbo recruited are still there that were highly talented. I don't think it's going to be – I don't think A&M's as bad as people think that are going to make them. So if you can go in there and win, I agree with you. It's going to be a really big deal.
Yeah, but we all know this isn't a score projection yet. Or like a game prediction. We already did like a really loose one, and that was where I got.
No, I'd make one. I think it's within 7. I think
Notre Dame. I think they realistically can win by 7 to 10 points. I think that's totally doable for them.
Very doable. But you know, I've seen this. I've seen people saying that, oh well, Notre Dame's going to go in there and blow them out. No, you're not. That's not going to happen. I'm not dumb enough to think that is on the radar for them. That would be asinine to try to throw out there that they're going to blow Texas A&M out of the water. Could it happen? It absolutely could. Is it likely? No. I think that you would have to be really, really, your head would have to be in the clouds to think that something like that is guaranteed to happen. All right, you want to get on the LSU here? Yeah. Oh wait, we got a super chat. Let me get to that really quick. Yeah. Cody McGee sends a $4.99 super chat. Says, is this Marcus Freeman's make it or break it year at Notre Dame? I think that it is, but to better define that, if it is his make or break year, he just needs to get to the playoff. I think if he gets to the playoff, let me rephrase. If he doesn't get to the playoff with this week of a schedule, that's when I think everybody is going to start to get really, really, really uneasy. A lot of Notre Dame fans are going to be saying, how did you manage to fail to get this team to the playoff with that week of a schedule? There are such a low barrier of entry. I think that certainly it could be a make or break year for him. I'm going to say no, because I still think you have to give a first-time coach some grace. Yeah, but like with everything that they've got, if they fail to get there, don't you think that'd be really brutal? What's your thoughts on Ryan Day? What do you mean by that? I mean, Ryan Day is in the same boat. People put him in the same boat. It's not that he sucks as a coach. Maybe you just do have to wait a little bit longer than 3 years with a coach. That's again. Well, I'm not asking him to win. I'm not asking him to win a national championship. I don't think a national championship is going to happen this year. I'm not asking him to win one. No, I know. Ryan Day is a different circumstance. He took over a national championship caliber team. Let me ask you this question, because we got to get to LSU. We got to get moving. Okay. Let me ask you this question: what if Marcus Freeman does miss the playoffs or is one and done in the playoffs? What's the perception really going to – I think the headline reads, is it a Notre Dame issue? If they're one and done in the playoffs? No, I don't think that – for what you just said a second ago, you got to give a guy time to – No, I'm asking you what the perception would be, not what I think, what the perception would be. Naturally, the national perspective is going to be down on Notre Dame. I think a lot of Notre Dame fans would be satisfied if they got to the playoff. And as long as they don't get blown out like they've done in the past, I think that most Notre Dame fans would be satisfied. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.